Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. Today is Wednesday, which means it's the day where you get to ask me anything, and I will answer those questions. And yes, I realize that the show is a little later today than I normally like to have the show. However, that's because I was in Concord at the legislature. I spent most of the day with the Election Law Committee trying to keep them from doing some pretty bad things, one of which would have been to institute a bill that would allow the moderator of a polling place to remove someone who was at the polling place with something that the moderator deemed to be objectionable. The sponsor of the bill got up and talked about how at his polling place there's a lady that's been going there for 8 years now, and she has a poster that has a picture of an aborted fetus, and then it has a message that says, like, vote pro-life. And, well, there are people that bring their children to the polling place, and that's disturbing to children, and we can't have that. And so I got up and I spoke to the committee, and I told them that it is very odd, or not odd, but it's seems to be a standard practice of always say it's for the children, and then you can do whatever you want. So in this case, the sponsor of the bill wants to give the moderator more power so that they can remove things that might be objectionable, and that is not clearly defined, or things that are disturbing to children. It's for the children. And then I gave the example, and I actually want to do this at some point. I gave myself a brilliant idea, and if you take the idea and run with it and do it, then more power to you. I hope this actually winds up being turned into a sign. I said, would it be considered objectionable if I were to stand at the polling place with a picture of a donkey copulating with an elephant and the message that says, this is bipartisanship? And, of course, they did not respond because the committee hearings are when you get to testify to them. But it put the thought in their mind about, hey, wait a second, we're trying to ban purely political speech here, and that's not something that we can do. So that's one of the bad pieces of legislation that was before them. There were others that I can talk about at length at another time, but this is the show where I answer your questions. The first question deals with time travel. How can John Connor send his own father to the past to impregnate his mother with himself? And then there's a note from the questioner that says, this question is from my son-in-law in reference to the Terminator series. And this is actually a very interesting question because it does bring up the time travel paradox. And there's the theory, and I actually happen to believe this theory, that you cannot travel into the past. You can travel into the future. And we know this because there are circumstances in which you have astronauts that will spend large amounts of time on, like, the International Space Station, and because they are further away from the center of gravity of Earth, the effect of the rotation of the Earth has less effect on them, so they actually age less. So in a sense, they have traveled into the future. So their body will have aged, let's just say 45 days when they were actually in there for 60 days. So their body thinks that it's 15 days sooner than it actually is. So that's one slight variant on traveling into the future. I realize it's not, the exact same, but in theory, if you go fast enough and you stay within the Earth's orbit and you go fast enough, so that when you come to a stop, you're not, floating off in the middle of space somewhere, and you have a clock set, and let's just say that you're spinning around the Earth for 240 hours. Then that would be 10 days. Well, in actuality, there could have been 12 days that have elapsed. So you are 2 days into the future from where you should be. So that is theoretically possible. And the question, I realize that the question deals with traveling into the past. So let me just sort of talk about the time travel paradox a little bit. And I know most about the time travel paradox from watching Futurama. And there's the one episode that is ever so brilliant where Fry and the professor and Leela and Bender, they wind up actually going to 1947, and Bender and the crab doctor, Zoidberg, they wind up getting partially taken into custody by, I say partially because Bender's head was still buried under the desert, but they wind up getting partially taken into custody by the U.S. Air Force as the Roswell crash. And Zoidberg was the alien, and Bender's body was put back together as the spaceship, as a very small spaceship that, nothing the size of Zoidberg would be able to come out. But anyway, that happened, and then Philip was trying to prevent his grandfather from dying because 1947 was the year that Philip's dad was born, and somehow something happened, and Philip wound up sleeping with his grandmother. His grandfather died, and so Philip J. Fry in Futurama is his own grandfather, because of the time travel paradox. And then you also had the situation in the 3012 elections to where there was some, I think it was the 3012 election or 3008. I forget exactly which, but they had this candidate that was running against Richard Nixon's head. And there was the question about, can you produce your birth certificate? And he kept saying, I'm definitely from Earth, blah, 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 blah. And then somebody did some investigation and found out that he was actually from the future. So they had a news camera go and cover the birth of the presidential candidate. And what happened was this candidate wound up winning the election. And then as soon as he won the election, he disappeared. Poof, he's gone. Because he was sent from the future to make sure that Richard Nixon's head did not wind up winning the election. But because he won the election, then he was never sent from the future into the past. So that is the time travel paradox of where, if you go into the past to prevent something from happening, then were you able to actually wind up preventing it from happening, or does it happen anyway? Because if it doesn't happen, then there was no need for you to go into the past to prevent it from happening. So to answer the question, John Connor cannot send his own father into the past because you can't go into the past. You can only go to the future. I've got more questions when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month or any amount of Bitcoin per month, thanks to the recurring payment options provided by Coinbase. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com. Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Opening a wallet is quick and easy, and for merchants, there are no transaction fees on the first $1 million worth of transactions. All of your funds on Coinbase are safe, with approximately 90% of customer funds being stored offline, and all wallets are stored using AES 256 encryption. To date, Coinbase has more than 1 million consumer wallets and is trusted by over 25,000 merchants, including Overstock.com, Khan Academy, Reddit, and of course, FPP. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. That's coinbase.fppradio.com. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So the next couple of questions are actually related. And they're very interesting questions, and I love the way that these were put together because after I read the question, I had to think for a second to figure out exactly what the underlying question was. So I will read the question. Actually, it's 3 questions that are all tied in together, but I will read them as they are written, and then I will tell you what the underlying question is. The questions. Why do people get offended when they see a baby eating in public and think babies should eat in restrooms instead? Why do people think babies should eat with a blanket over their heads? How many adults would like to eat with a blanket over their heads? Now, I'm sure that you can realize what I'm getting at here, or actually what the questioner is getting at, because I didn't come up with these questions. I will admit that there was one time that I had no actual questions, and I just took a question that somebody had posted on Facebook and decided to do that as my AMA. That was not the case here. So someone who frequently asks questions sent me these questions here. And so the point that they're trying to make is in regards to breastfeeding. And I've seen this put in a slightly different manner, and the way it was done was very interesting, and it had me scratching my head like, okay, and what happened next? So one of my friends a couple of years ago posted on Facebook that her food was delivered at a restaurant, but then she took her plate into the bathroom and, put the plate on something, and then, that was the end of the status. And I was like, okay, and then what happened? Did you eat your food in the bathroom? And then I realized, she didn't actually do this. She was just trying to make a point. And the point is that there are a lot of people that are upset and offended by nature. Nature, in this case, is a mother breastfeeding her baby. There is nothing offensive about that. I find that it's one of the more natural things, a mother feeding a child. And basically it's not only a form of feeding the baby, but it's a form of bonding between the mother and the child. I don't know of anybody that would object to if they take their child to a petting zoo, and let's just say that the petting zoo has a mama cow and some baby cows. If the baby cow walks over and starts drinking milk, then will parents wind up getting upset at seeing a baby cow drink milk from its mother? And if not, then why do they get offended when they see someone feeding their child? Is it because a female human breast is somehow offensive to these people? Is it repulsive in some way? I would say no. And I really like the point that's being made in the manner that it's being made here with the questions. And I wish that I knew why some people got offended by nature. It goes back to the very first thing that I started talking about on the show today, about the person at the polling place that has the sign with the picture of the aborted fetus. And some people, obviously, yes, that's a visually disturbing image, but it's an image that, they're in the public square. That's political speech when it has a message that says vote pro-life. Whether you agree or disagree with the image, you have to admit that it's a powerful image. It is something that happened. And, this same thing, someone feeding their child, obviously it's not, anywhere near as visually disturbing as a picture of a dead baby, but some people are disturbed by nature or things that happen. And the whole thing about, you have to put a blanket over your baby's head, that is to protect themselves. Like, I don't want to see anything that might offend me or give me thoughts that I don't want to have, so therefore you should cover up. And then sooner or later, if you go down the slippery slope, that's how you wind up with women in burqas. And yes, I do believe that I just compared people that want to see babies, or rather don't want to see babies being fed naturally. I compared them to the people that are running Saudi Arabia, because that's exactly what they're doing. It's to a slightly lesser scale, but if you go down the slippery slope of, well, I might see a nipple and that would make me think impure things and then I would feel bad. Okay, then I guess you can't go to the beach either, because you might see something that makes you have impure thoughts, and that is how you wind up with women in burqas. And I don't know of anyone, to answer the third question, I don't know of anyone that would like to eat with a blanket over their own head. There are a couple of other questions here. Did you survive the cold last night? Yes, I did survive the cold last night. This question, of course, if you are not a regular listener to the show, then I need to wind up giving you some backstory here. So last summer, I wound up purchasing from a YMCA a short bus, a minibus that was used by the YMCA to transport campers from the YMCA to field trip sort of things. And since then, I've slowly been converting it into an RV. And I've been living in it since June. And the last couple of weeks here in New Hampshire have been getting a little chilly. So what I did before winter started, I bought a sleeping system. It's called an MSS. It's a military sleep system, where it's a system of 3 sleeping bags. It's actually 2 sleeping bags and then something that you could put those sleeping bags in that acts as sort of another sleeping bag, but it doesn't have the zipper or padding. But it adds some extra insulation. And when you have the one sleeping bag and the other in the third bag, then it's supposed to keep you warm to like negative 40 degrees. One sleeping bag from this system by itself is supposed to keep you warm to about 10 degrees. 2 sleeping bags is supposed to keep you warm to negative 10 degrees. Now, the Nautilus, which is what I call the thing that's being converted into an RV, and there's a reason that it's called a Nautilus, because while on the outside it might look like a bus, I found out that bus is a legal term for vehicle with the capacity for 16 or more passengers plus a driver. Well, because seats were removed from this, and some of the seats were then cut and welded together to form the bed, and only one seat that is not the bed or the driver's seat remains, so there's only seating capacity for 2 people. So therefore, it's not a bus. There is some insulation on the inside, and I'll finish talking about the Nautilus and how I stay warm at night when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at ftpradio.com. During the 2013 Porcupine Freedom Festival, Davi Barker presented an idea for a renegade psychological experiment. Since then, he has refined his idea and put his plan and research into writing. He explains, "We aim to show the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that power corrupts absolutely and corrupt authority deserves no obedience." Authoritarian Sociopathy is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. ExpressCoin is the best choice for buying Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, and more. ExpressCoin prides themselves on their customer service, so much so that the back end on the website should allow them to be even more focused on your needs. Get your cryptocurrencies with money order, check, wire transfer, or cash deposit. Get started at expresscoin.fppradio.com. That's expresscoin.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for t-shirts, precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. There's an Amazon shopping iframe built into the website, or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. That's shop.fppradio.com. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So, the Nautilus. There is some insulation in that. And actually, I have to, before I finish telling you about the Nautilus, I have to make sure that I tell you about Roberts and Roberts Brokerage. Since 1977, Roberts and Roberts Brokerage has been a trusted source for buying and selling precious metals, and they now take Bitcoin for purchasing precious metals. So you can either call or visit their website, and when you purchase precious metals with Bitcoin, they have removed the minimum purchase order for buying Bitcoin. You can visit their website, rrbi.co. That's rrbi.co. Or the telephone number. And apologies, I did misplace the piece of paper here, so I'm working from memory, except I do have one of their telephone numbers at hand here. The telephone number is 800-874-9760. 800-874-9760, or online, rrbi.co. So to finish explaining about the Nautilus and how I stay warm at night, I did talk about the MSS, which is the military sleep system with the sleeping bags. And I wound up getting this used on Amazon. And because I'm not exactly a skinny guy, I can't use the sleeping bags as intended because they're just too constricting. Like, I fit, and there's, a little extra room, but because I like to curl up when I sleep, it's too constricting for me to use as a standard sleeping bag. So what I do, because there is a bed, and I, do have sheets on the bed, I have opened up the sleeping bag, and I use the sleeping bags as sort of comforter, sort of, bed covers sort of things. But I'll wrap a little bit of it around me so that, it's not exposed and then cold air winds up coming in. So there's maybe, like a 8-inch gap up under me between the two sides of the sleeping bag. And that gives me room to where I can move around while I sleep and wiggle and not feel claustrophobic. So I have the two sleeping bags plus a comforter that winds up giving a good bit of warmth. But I have also, because down at the bottom, sometimes your feet wind up getting cold in the middle of the night. So I've bought these hand warmers that, basically they're about 50 cents a pack. I, tend to buy a decent amount at a time. And what I'll do a little bit before I go to bed is I'll open up a pack of 2, put one down by the feet. That way it warms up, because these things don't warm up as soon as you open the pack. So, you open the pack, it's air activated, and it takes a little while to actually work. So I'll open it up and put it down in the feet. So then when I put my feet into the sleeping bag, they're nice and warm. And then I'll keep another one somewhere in like the mid region to keep the core of my body and my arms warm. And I found that keeps me very warm through the night. I have a portable thermometer. It's a digital thermometer that currently it's on the wall of the Nautilus, and it will show me the high and the low for like the last 12 hours or so. It also keeps the humidity, so it will tell me the high and the low of the humidity over the same period of time. And I need to put this up in the sleeping bag again, because I've not done this in a while, to see what the temperature actually in the sleeping bag is. One of the first nights that it got below freezing, I decided, I want to see what the temperature in, I call it my cocoon. When I go to bed, I crawl in what I call my cocoon. So I wanted to see what the temperature was in my cocoon. So before I went to bed, I grabbed the thermometer and put it in. And because it shows you the high and the low over, I think it's like an 8-hour period, I woke up in the morning, and I looked, and it was 88 degrees in the cocoon, had been as high as 91. So, that's fairly warm inside just a couple of blankets, basically. So what I need to do, and I'll probably wind up doing this tonight, just so that I can test it, put the thermometer in where I'm using 2 of the sleeping bags plus a comforter and one of the heat pads. Or it's not really a pad, one of the little hand warmer packs. It's, no bigger than your fist. So I'll wind up putting that in just so I can see, what the difference is if it winds up going, a good bit above. Because I know that those little packs, it says that the high temperature can be like 130 degrees on those. And yes, I know there's the warning label that says, don't use this while you're asleep. But obviously I'm taking a risk. I know I'm taking a risk, but I keep it far enough away from my body to where it's not going to wind up burning me. And, I'm being safe. So if I do wind up waking up in the middle of the night, and I actually had this happen one time, where I woke up in the middle of the night and my arm was really hot because I rolled over and my arm was actually on top of this little hand warmer thing. So that's how I keep warm at night. Now, where I park the Nautilus, it is right next to a house, and I've got a deal worked out with the property owner on that. I need to try to find a way to get an extension cord run out so that I can actually run a space heater. But right now, the garage, which has an outlet box that's very close, maybe 10 feet away, that outlet box actually is not connected with power. So I need to figure something out on that. That way I'm not relying on little hand warmer packs to stay warm at night. But I do stay plenty warm, so no need to worry, people that are asking how I survive in the cold or how I survive at night. And also the Snowmageddon or Snowpocalypse, whatever it is you want to call it, that was supposed to have totally, destroyed New England. It was not anywhere near as bad as what they were claiming it was going to be. So that also is very, very good. I've got just a couple of minutes left here and no more questions. So I want to just talk a little bit more about the experience in Concord today. There was one of the bills that would have repealed the law against taking a picture of your ballot and posting that online. It actually just makes it illegal to take a picture of your ballot. It also includes it's illegal to post it online. And what I did as part of my testimony was I printed off the page from Facebook where I had my ballot in a post that I posted to Facebook, and it said, taken in the polling booth. And I passed that around, and the chair of the committee actually asked the Deputy Secretary of State if she was violating the law by possessing the picture. And I am proud to report that the Secretary of State, after I basically asked him to either arrest me or give me a ticket did no such thing. So hopefully, it stays that way and I stay out of court. But otherwise, I'll let you know. Peace, love, Liberty Radio.